That's good.
All right. So welcome to this Sunday's edition of Bangladesh Angels DLS. We like to call them digital learning sessions as a means to kind of stimulate conversations around startup investing and tech within the community. And I see we've got people from all over the world. My name is Nirchor. As you know, I'm the CEO of Bangladesh Angels. Once again, I do apologize for the slight timing mishap. So just to introduce our esteemed panelists, first the company. So Dittofi is a UK-based startup offering aspiring entrepreneurs, startups, and enterprises a no-code solution to turn ideas quickly into scalable production-ready software applications. The platform is unique from other no-code platforms in its approach that not only allows for rapid idea conversion, but also for ownership of the full stack application source code, handling of big data and production-ready scalability, which we'll learn more about today in the presentation. The approach takes away most of the application development risk and lets creators focus on the business aspects of their idea. So we've got here today James and Sam. So James is the CEO and co-founder. So he was the third hire at Oncoa Software, which has been acquired by Cinnober, and founder and CEO of Bay Street Systems, a real-time SaaS development partnership with TMX. He graduated in mathematical finance from the University of York. And then we've got Sam, who's the CTO, senior product specialist at Bloomberg, founder and CTO, also of Bay Street Systems. And then he received his BA in honors in the Germanic languages from the University College London. Welcome, James and Sam.
Hi, thank you very much for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. I think, just to kind of contextualize, we were introduced by one of our members in Houston, Farid Huda, who I think is unfortunately not in the call today. And we were having this conversation around, at least at Bangladesh Angels, I often see a lot of proposals for early stage startups, pre-seed stage startups in Bangladesh, where they're asking for maybe $150,000, $250,000, and it's almost 30% for marketing, 30% for tech, and then the rest for operations. When you ask them, what are you going to do about marketing? We're going to do Facebook. All right. What are you going to do about tech? Well, we're going to outsource it to a development firm. And I've just seen the precarious nature of that, particularly with non-technical teams, sometimes getting taken advantage of by development firms who create often cookie cutter solutions that actually aren't really great, and they don't have any control. It's very hard for them to change it. And then sometimes they don't even have the IP rights to it. And so I thought, no code, I came across the idea as a concept last year. We did a webinar on it just to introduce the idea, but I really wanted to kind of go further and was looking for a partner. So I'm quite glad that Dittofi's kind of come on board. And so we're quite looking forward to that. And stay tuned, we are working on a potential kind of product for you as Bangladesh Angels and Dittofi. So stay tuned till the end. But I guess the first question I would have before you go to your presentation, how proud are your parents that you managed to be brothers and build not one but two companies together, it seems?
I think the reason we've been so successful so far working together is the fact that we're brothers. In a startup world, there's kind of like a lot of tension at points. And if you have that like brotherly bond, that means it doesn't break. So when we actually pitched to the TMX, we were three people at the time. And they were kind of very hesitant to do business with just three people, right? Because it's an international stock exchange. And I said in the pitch that there's kind of no way this thing can break up because we're related by blood. So it will make Christmas dinner impossible to get through otherwise. So yeah, I think that's probably been our strongest thing. And we complement each other very well. So Samuel's incredibly good on the technical side, and I'm much more kind of on the sales, product, business development side. Although I was previously a developer as well. So yeah, I think we're a very good team, and we're actually, I think very lucky to have each other to work with. But in terms of our parents, I think parents just basically think we're a bit mad, to be honest with you. Neither of us have, other than, well, Samuel worked at Bloomberg, but I've never really had a proper large company job before. It's always been startup to startup. So I think they wonder why we're doing these things all the time. And obviously startups are incredibly intense as well, right? So we're always away from home. We're always, always working. It can be a bit tough for the other people as well.
Yeah, well, some people kind of go around the world to find their co-founder. You just had to look into your bedroom, I think. I love that. I love that. Yeah. But I'll give the floor to you now. Please, I know you have a presentation for us and a demo, so please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. So if I can grab, I need that top panel to vanish. Second, sorry about this. I have too many tabs open and I can't get rid of this top item. Close some of these. Here we go. So yeah, our belief, so our company, Dittofi, we were founded 2020. Our belief is that future businesses are going to be built on code. But however, we are a no-code product. So this is kind of where our tagline comes from. Future business will be built on no code. Future business will be built on code. We believe that there's a huge lack of like high-quality software developers that are in the marketplace at the moment. There is a huge demand for those developers that can work. So we believe in kind of the power of no code. But our kind of core belief is that you'll always eventually need access to your source code at some point in your company's lifecycle, which is basically why we built this product, so that you can have you can be empowered to build software, but then to also own and extract your source code from the application. And we're the first full stack no code platform. So this is one that's able to build both front end, back end, scalable applications that allows users to extract the full stack source code from their applications. Our backgrounds, as was briefly mentioned, so Samuel and I are both serial entrepreneurs. I think we've earned that title now. So we've kind of been involved in all manner of startups, from anything from kind of like idea stage all the way up to Series A and exit. Neither of us have ever been involved with a startup that went beyond Series A and exit. But we've been involved in everything from kind of, idea, self-funded, all the way through to kind of like, I guess like a £5 million raise, I think was the largest one that either of us have been involved in, with a Series A point. The way that we started Dittofi was that in 2020, April 2020, we were in kind of like an idea stage. So we were working with the TMX from our previous business, and we found out that our business partner that we were working with was around 50 years old, and I was 25 and Samuel was 23 at the time. And when you do kind of like a partnership with someone who's so much your senior, it was very difficult to kind of retain control of the business. So in about 2019, I think it was, we kind of realized that he kind of jockeyed himself into a very strong position. He kind of had full ownership over all of the intellectual property that we built. And this was very disturbing for us as founders of the company, because we didn't actually own the software that we built. So in about 2019, I went down from Montreal down to New York City, and I met up with a fund there called CF Squared, and I kind of pitched this idea for a no-code platform. So to give a bit of context to what no-code is this idea, of being able to build applications without necessarily requiring the technical co-founder to build your application with you. So we saw kind of major problems in the world of no-code, which was that when you build your app, which are kind of twofold. In the first case, if you kind of build your application, you're never going to be given access to your computer code or the full stack of your computer code, which means as a startup, you might be building your application, then you kind of reach into like a feature limitation, set of feature limitations of the no-code platform, and then you're kind of stuck. You can't push through those unless the no-code platform enhances their own application. You might have invested quite a lot of time learning that system. You might have invested even money hiring no-code developers in order to help you build that system. And then when you get to that kind of blocking point, you're kind of back to square one. You have to rebuild everything from the beginning again, which means going the traditional route, trying to find money, hire developers, and then again you're kind of back in that difficult patch. So I pitched this idea of building a system that was able to automatically generate real computer code. The other problem with a lot of the no-code platforms in the market at the moment is that they don't tend to scale very well. So they can they go to kind of like medium size amounts of data, but anything kind of medium to large data sets, they tend to fall apart when you kind of hit those levels. And so what we had was, because Samuel and I, our background was that we'd worked on this big project that required real-time analytics for the TMX, which was analyzing like north of 100 million records in real time every single day, all within the periods of 6 a.m. Through till 6:30 through to like 4:30 in the afternoon. So our system had to be really robust. And we had all that knowledge that we kind of developed over those years, trying to figure out how to build that system. So we kind of took about 10 years worth of development experience handling these big data sets, and also in code generation technology. And we kind of thought, well, let's wrap this up into a product which we can then pass back to the market so that everyone can kind of enjoy it. And to give a bit of kind of like some monetary values to that, the system that we built for the TMX, we probably spent, I guess, all in all, including kind of like time spent, it would have been around $1 million spent on building the application. We invested hard cash of about $500,000, but that doesn't take account of all of the extra hours that people put in for free leading up to the point where we actually built the system. So if you can imagine that whole process took 5 years to do, and with Dittofi, we've kind of figured out a way where we can condense that build into maybe a matter of hours, as opposed to a matter of years. So that was the idea stage. That was when we kind of came up with this concept, and we were like, okay, this is a problem that we see in the market. This is a solution to that problem. So I pitched that to this fund in about February 2019. We then started kind of prototyping stuff, having a look at like how this could be actually done in practice. We took a couple of smaller startups on, and we tried to build their applications using our technology and using our ideas. This was before we'd even incorporated the firm. And we kind of learned through that process, kind of an array of different features that different users would want to have. So whether these are like third-party, API integrations that need to be done and kind of available off the shelf, or if it's, I don't know, like a specific kind of like workflow for your back end. We kind of went through that learning process at that time. So by the time we hit April 2020, we had a very concrete idea, and it was still, I would still say, even though we prototyped a lot of things, it was still very much in an idea phase. So then in April 2020, we actually had such a backlog of clients at that point, people who I'd pitched this concept to, that we decided that it was time to incorporate, because we needed to start signing contracts with people. But we still didn't really have a kind of an end-to-end product. So we incorporated in April. We incorporated with the fund as well, and I have a very good relationship with the fund itself. So we shook hands on an equity share at the time, and they agreed to invest a certain amount in the future based on certain milestones that we would hit. That was kind of the beginning, I guess, of implementing those initial clients. So from there, what we did was we took on an initial cohort of just five startups, which came through a university connection that I had. And we then spent between about April, I'd say, and maybe October building those systems, but trying very much to use the technology that we built in order to build them their applications. So we didn't kind of like veer off and do any manual coding in that process. And that was very much us working with the startups, watching how they use the tool, kind of helping them through the whole process. So by about October time, we built those 5 systems, and we'd also, that process that allowed us to mature our system significantly. So I say by like around November time, 2020, we built our minimum viable product, which we just immediately threw up online without kind of any thought to the consequences of what might happen next. So we just chucked everything up online. We then got contacted by a couple of development agencies, and one particular consultancy that is based in New York, who'd seen one of my pitches for funding at a pitch event. And that agency was using another no-code platform at the time. They were in kind of advanced discussions with that no-code platform provider, which is actually a unicorn no-code product. And they pit us kind of like head to head, feature to feature against this other unicorn no-code platform. And we actually scored higher than them on the ranking, and they ended up going with us as a product. So by December, between April and December, we'd kind of already beaten a unicorn no-code platform in a feature for feature trade-off. So that period between April and December was incredibly intense. It was a lot of work. I don't think Samuel has left the house, and I think as bad as the coronavirus pandemic has been for everyone, I don't think we could have done this that fast if we'd had any other distractions. So it was really, we were locked in our bedrooms since April, or even before, slightly before that, building the platform. So in January, we launched the system. On the 16th of January, we launched. We pushed it up, and we got I made one post on one page on Facebook, and we immediately acquired about 30 or 40 users of the platform within like 24 hours. And then I kind of, as a team, we're quite a small team, so about 10 people at the moment. And I kind of had a little bit of a panic because I was thinking, if we keep growing at that rate, if we start running like proper ads and everything, this is going to quickly become too much business to handle. So we slowed down a little bit, but it's very difficult to slow this down because there's so much demand in the marketplace for it. So we actually pushed on. We've got some additional investment capital, and then we've just actually crossed 100 users of the platform. These would be 100 users of the free tier of the platform already. So that was, quite a fast route to market. Then on top of that, we sell kind of to two marketplaces. We sell on the one side to the startups who come mainly on the free tier of the product, and they start to build the application. And then we also sell to the corporates as well. So on the corporate side, we've been targeting more of the technical teams within organizations where we kind of augment their development processes. I don't know if I'm speaking too much, so maybe Najor, if you want to cut in or anything, or am I good to just kind of keep going?
Yeah, no, please keep going. No worries.
Okay, for sure. So these are just like a couple of examples of the software that we've built so far, or have been built on our platform so far. So these range really from everything from kind of like an event management system all the way through to something like more complex. Like we've had a cryptocurrency exchange based out in the Netherlands look to build their technology directly on our platform. So there's a company there called Crypto Arena who've been pretty engaged since the start, building various apps. Their most recent one is a gas tracker, which tracks gas and triggers alerts, saying like kind of when good rates are to make the relevant conversions. Most recently, on the corporate side, we've found that we've been able to significantly improve the speed at which the applications have been built. So if I point you towards the application on the right-hand side of the screen, which is called Big Bertha. So what we saw here is that the platform was built. This is a social media application, but it's kind of like a LinkedIn-based application. But for social media, LinkedIn kind of esque, but for the capital markets. So it required 4 different APIs to be integrated with some real-time data streams to be put in, and also an entire social media framework with the necessary permissions, full like database management and everything. And they had contracted a development agency to build their application. So the price the development agency gave to them was kind of high, and the guy who's come up with this idea he's just like a normal person who kind of like has a normal day job. So for him, he's kind of looking at maybe like a 16-week development process just to get his first working version of the system out, during which period of time, of course, he has to pay for the development work to be done. So I was introduced to him, and I said, well, let's use this kind of like as a case study for the Dittofi platform. So we actually managed to help them put together the entire back end of their platform and the majority of their front end in just 12 hours. So it was within a week we managed to kind of get him. I don't know how many lines of code we're looking at now for him, but it must be in the tens of thousands, if not the hundreds of thousands, within a 12-hour period. And then, of course, yeah, we've had these other consultancies as well who've come onto the platform. Slightly less technical users at the larger consultancies, where we've seen kind of in pickup from this new class of person called citizen developers, who kind of build on these no-code stacks. And obviously during the pandemic, there's been a massive increase in the amount of applications that have needed to be built, or people have wanted to build. And that's really kind of like unlocked, I guess, like, yeah, the pandemic has unlocked this massive demand or increased the demand for developers. And that's kind of caused people to have to look more and more towards these no-code tools. So yeah, on that side, on the more consultancy side, we're seeing these kind of slightly less technical people get involved. Those people, it takes them slightly longer to build their applications because they're not so familiar with the concepts, and they have a higher learning curve. But even so, we built this on-demand ETL tool with one of these companies in just a couple of days, which again would have taken them normally, months of resourcing and development work. So that's kind of the value proposition for no code, is that you really take that, you see that kind of like that problem in the supply and the demand for high quality software development, and you see that because there's such a dislocation in the supply and demand, but the demand for high quality software versus the supply of the developers, that when you ever have a dislocation like that, the prices, of course, the price of getting any work done is incredibly expensive. The risks involved, they say 65% of all software development projects fail, 85% of all big data projects will fail. And then you've got, so yeah, before you even start your project, you're looking at having to source a huge amount of funding. On top of that, you've got a very low chance that the project actually succeeds. And then if anyone who's ever really worked in IT will know, anyone who's ever worked in IT will know, the time, the scope creep and, the time that it actually takes to build a product is phenomenal. So you can have like a 2-month timeline that can easily spiral into like a 2-year timeline. So no code seeks to address that imbalance in the supply and the demand for high quality software developers. And by addressing that demand, that imbalance, overcome those three main problems. So that's really what we've seen as well, is that building systems through these point and click interfaces does solve that problem. So that's kind of, I guess that's kind of an intro to the types of apps that we've built on the platform. We've had many more of those as well. Like we've had a fund builder microfinancing platform on there as well, which was used to service like small business loans. And we've had, like a host of other things as well, but it's just a kind of like an introduction to the types of apps that have been built so far. This is an example of where we've helped one of these development agencies to give an idea of the time taken to build applications code by hand versus the time taken on our platform. So where you'd be looking, say, to build the full stack application, this can be anything from your back end, so your whole application server, which is this first box up here, with your database set up, building all of your server-side logic and so on. So where we've seen kind of like 8 weeks, time frame to code something by hand, we've been able to do it in a matter of hours. The front-end development work we found has been harder to kind of bring into a no-code setup, because people's ideas of what they want from a front-end point of view are so diverse, that these app builders, from the front-end point of view, you're kind of limited a little bit in terms of what's available within the application. So what we've done here is we've allowed users to kind of augment their applications with real computer code as they go, so that you can never run into a blocker. And that's something that we've also seen on some of the other tools as well, like things like Webflow and Bubble and so on, where people have run into kind of limitations on the way they can necessarily style the front end of their applications. So we thought it was important there to allow people a way around that. So yeah, so the front end development takes a little bit longer on the platform, but still significantly faster than coding it by hand. And then testing of the applications themselves. So we have a fully containerized method of deployment, which is all automated. So you literally click one button and it gets pushed up into a secure container run out of Amazon Web Services. So where before you might have been spending X numbers of weeks testing your application before deploying it, in our case, the code that auto-generates it's like sweated already in production with other users of the application. So, provided that 10 other users have kind of like already used the platform, you kind of can be very confident that it's going to work for you as well, because if there's a problem anywhere, it kind of gets fixed for everyone all in one shot. So that just really reduces the amount of time you need to kind of like test the application before deployment, and you can really kind of bring that up, do your sort of kind of like general UI testing, but stress testing, all that stuff is taken care of on our side. So again, it really increases the amount of decreases the amount of time it takes to get a full stack enterprise grade bit of software out into the market. And then, of course, as our unique selling point is that we provide the code back to you, you have the full rights to export the computer code that gets generated by the application, and then you can take that, bring that into your business as an asset, which your business can really own and can sit, on the balance sheet of your company. And then yeah, kind of like at the point where you want to, or the point where maybe you're required to, let's say you go for like a Series A round and an investor requires you to actually own the intellectual property, you can take that code and you can hire your own development team and you can kind of scale it from there. So that's kind of like our kind of way of doing things. Conscious that we're going into the demo now, and I was wondering if anyone had any questions for me before Samuel kicks off the demo of the application itself.
I have one.
Go ahead, Bob.
May I go?
Yes, please.
Okay. So which kind of software are we talking about? Like Android, iOS, or Windows or Mac?
Sure. So the back end of our application, that will support any type of front end. So the back end builder automatically generates in Google Go, so it's Golang code. The front end builder will automatically generate in React or the React and Redux frameworks. You can run those directly in the browser of your application. You can also run them on the desktop of your application, like as a desktop app as well. And we have had a couple of users who've kind of figured out ways to run them on mobile phone as well. But we don't say directly that running it on a mobile phone, that's not something that we support out of the box today. But because we give you access to the source code, technically you can kind of figure out a way to run them on your mobile phones as well as applications.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi, this is Ismail speaking. I have a question. Does your no-code option apply to Chrome extensions as well? Like, can you create a Chrome extension MVP as well?
Samuel, do you want to talk through that?
I don't think you can. I'm not actually too sure, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah. It's for, like James said, building things like web applications, desktop apps, and you can build backends of your system. I don't believe you could build a browser extension on it.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Shall I take over?
Yeah, if I can just shrink and then you share your screen.
Is that shared now?
That is, yeah.
See the main app, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's minimize this if we can. So the way our application works is it's basically broken up into a number of different tabs, which correspond to the different life cycles of development, basically. So in the first tab here, you have a screen where you can start building up the front end of your system. So the different screens that you're going to actually be displaying. Here are some example ones that I've put in here already. The way that this screen works is you basically have a list of components on the left-hand side of the screen here, and you can simply drag these components onto the screen in the middle of the page. So for example, I've pulled on a list component here. When you pull the component onto the screen, you'll see you have a little pop-up box here, which shows you the settings associated with that particular component. This is a list component, so the settings are to do with like the bullet points, basically. If I click the Show All Settings button here, then you can see a full list of settings on the right-hand side. Different components will basically have different settings associated with them. So for example, if I wanted to build kind of a simple layout, I could start off by pulling on a layout component like this. If I wanted to add a form to that, I could grab a form component from the left-hand side and put it on. If I wanted to put like a picture in, I could grab like an image component and stick that on the right-hand side like so. So as you can see, the components can kind of be nested inside each other to build out a different layout. If I select the image options here and look in the Show All Settings section, I can see the different properties I've got associated with the image component. One of those properties is to set the kind of source for the image, so where you're loading it from. So what I could do is, if I grab this image here, I could come over here, select the option here, and then paste that in there in order to configure my component to load an image. If I wanted to start to restyle stuff on the screen, I can click on any of the components on the screen like so. And then under this little paintbrush icon here, I have a list of different styling options. So for example, if I wanted to space this out a bit, then I've got an option here to start kind of adding padding around the different components. If I wanted to change like the text, like italicize it, underline and so on, change the colors or anything that you can really think of, then that can all be done from the styling panel here. Once you've kind of styled a component the way that you want to, you've got an option at the top here where it says create a class, which allows you to basically save the styling that you've created for that component and then reuse that styling throughout your app to make sure your app kind of looks consistent. So if I just delete this label one here and select one of my input boxes, I've already created a class here called input, which contains all my input styling. So I can apply that to the different input boxes on the screen. I've created a class called button, which has my button styling. So I can apply that to my button on the screen as well. This allows me to kind of, save and reuse styles to make sure my app looks and feels consistent. I could just delete that there. If I wanted to maybe space this whole thing out a bit, then I could again come over to this option here, add some like margin to the top, like so. And then I could, or if I make this padding like so to space it out, I could then come down here and change like the background color, for example, to make it like a dark color. If I select my form that I've added to the screen, I could also put like a heading in here. And if I just set the color of that to white so we can see the text, then I could have something here like, please sign up to my app. So as you can see, basically by pulling different components onto the screen, using this styles panel, and then using the different kind of settings that are associated with the different components, you can start to very, very quickly build up a screen for your app. If I show you some of the other screens that I've got here, I built some simple screens here just to like load and display data on the screen. If I click on this preview button here, this actually launches these screens in one of our kind of secure containerized environments. So you can see, if I click on that now, this will load up this first screen that I created, and I can kind of click through here and show you the different ones that I made. These whole page allows you to also start to add kind of proper custom functionality into your app as well. So what we've done here is simply build out the kind of visuals of your app. But obviously there's different things that you want to happen when the user's actually using your app. So for example, when they click on this button, you want a certain thing to happen. When they type their information here, you might want to display some other information, this kind of thing. So in the example app here, some of the example functionality is I can kind of input a ticket here, click this plot button, then it loads a bunch of information, displays it on the screen, and I can kind of load information, display it in a graph. On this screen here, some of the example functionality is you can click on different buttons here, and that will load up information on your screen in different places. So having kind of built the visuals of the app, like I've done here, the next step is to basically hook up that functionality that I just showed you there. And the way you can do that is by kind of stepping into these next tabs down here. So one of the core components to every single app that you build is going to be the data that you're going to be displaying in your app. Every app in the world pretty much is driven by the data that you're storing and displaying. So in this second tab down here, the kind of first step to bringing some functionality into our app is to start to define the data that we actually want to display in our app. So on this screen here, you can come in and you can add different tables of information, basically, and in the same way that you would add a table to like an Excel spreadsheet. So here you can see I've added a table called trade data, which contains a bunch of data, in this case, on different stocks. And this corresponds to the data that I was loading and displaying in the table over here. I've also added tables to store things like the users of my application, and data to store kind of other information about my app. If I wanted to add a new table, I can click on this create new table button over here and click the new table button, which will allow me to bring in a new table. If I want to add new columns to my table, I can click the little plus here and add a column to the end of the table like so. For those people who are more kind of technically minded, what you're doing while you're building up these different tables is building up your kind of database schema, as we call it. And if you want to see a kind of more technical representation of that, you can click this little yellow button in the top right-hand corner, and that shows you the kind of schema diagram that you've built out. So these are all the different tables that we displayed on the previous screen. If you click into one of these tables, you have different options to do things like define relationships between tables, and define kind of different properties on the columns that you've added to your table. This allows you to build out a full kind of data structure, data schema for your application, again, all through point and click. Also from this first screen here, you can actually manage the data that's in your app. So for example, if you wanted to add and remove data manually, you can add new rows of data by clicking this plus button, and you can click into any of these cells and edit the data in here. This is quite a key feature because when you build your app, you're going to want to have some visibility over kind of the data that's being input into it. You want to see like the users that are signed up to your app, and you might want to go in and kind of manually change bits of information in order to administer your app. So at this point, we kind of understand that the first step of building your app is to build the visuals. And then the second step is to kind of define the data that you're going to be displaying in your app.
I think, Daniel, can I sorry,
Yep.
to cut across? I think that's also quite a key point there to note, which is that one of the things we had to do when we were fundraising is we have to capture a lot of data on how our users are interacting with our platform, because we need to show to investors or prospective investors that there's kind of an interest in the application. So we need to know how many users are coming there every day. We need to know how many of those are new, how many of those are recurring. We need to keep that on like a rolling 7-day basis. So that we can kind of like set ourselves internal targets, and then also take those targets, show them to the investors and say, we want to get, 100 users on a 7-day rolling basis in the next month or so. And that's kind of like what our target is. And right now we're maybe at 50. So by allowing kind of visibility into the back end of your system, this acts as like an administration portal, which really allows you, once you've finalized and built your app, you don't need to kind of constantly go back to a technical person to say, can I query the database to find out how many people are actually on my app? How do I know, like, I don't know, what the retention rates are and things like that? How do I know what buttons maybe that they're clicking on within the front end of my application and so on? So all of that information is taken account of by this tool here, which you're able to look into and actually see into your database without needing that technical person again. So that's like another major advantage of using a tool like this, as opposed to going the traditional development route where you're going to be built as like a standalone application, And then you also have to build the whole administration side of it as well, right? You have to build a whole back office system to manage the front end portion of your system as well in a visual way. So sorry, Samuel, that was just like a side point that I wanted to bring up there.
That's a good point. So yeah, as I was saying, we've kind of built up the front end of our application for this screen here, and then we've built up this kind of representation of the data that we want to display in our app. And as James said, we've got a kind of full back office system now as well behind it to allow us to kind of manage that data. The next step in this process is to kind of think about the different kind of business logic or the different workflows that you want your application to actually perform. So that is done in this third tab down here. To give you a very simple example of what I mean by kind of workflow or business logic, one of the first things you want to do in your app is normally have a screen like this where a user can come in and sign up to your app. So on this screen here, you can build up what we call actions, and actions allow you to do things just like that, like set up a workflow where a user can sign up to your app. So if I take a look here, I've got an action that I created called login here, which allows the app to kind of build functionality for logging in a user into my application. The action, you basically just give it a name, which I've called login. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, what you can do is you can add different events to that action. Each one of those events is the kind of individual bit of logic that you actually want to run. So you can see here, I've got an event here called login web user. This will log in the user to my app. And then I have another event afterwards called send mail, which allows me to send an email. What this whole action is doing is it's logging my user in, and then it's, once they logged in, it's sending them an email saying kind of welcome to my application. If I click on one of these things here, then it expands the event, and you can kind of see how that's broken down. Each of the different events basically comes with a different form associated with it. And your job when you're building out your app is to basically just fill in this form, and then everything else gets kind of taken care of for you. So you can see as an example here, we have the form for the send mail option. And this is the option to kind of send emails from your application. So in the form here, you basically have to specify the email that you're going to be sending to, and you can specify kind of like a message and a template email that you're going to be sending. A more kind of complex action can be seen if I click on this first one here. One of the things that I didn't mention when I showed this kind of initial demo app here is where this data is actually coming from. So the user data that I showed in the users table here, this is data on users that have actually signed up to my application. But the data that I'm displaying in this table here, this is financial data for this particular demo, showing kind of stock prices. So in this case, we want to kind of be getting these stock prices from some reliable source. So for my app that I've built here, what I've done is I've connected to a third-party data source, and I'm loading the stock prices directly from there. And that's what this action here is basically taking care of. Using a more kind of complex flow like this, you can set up a data integration that would normally take you kind of a few weeks in literally a few hours. In this particular example, I'm connecting to a API that I've got here. I'm loading that data from the API, and basically what this whole chain is doing is it's taking that data and writing it into this trade data table that I created here. To go through that whole configuration, you can basically set up any connection to any API from the front end of our system, and then integrate it into this whole action chain, all through point and click. The way you do that is from the tool section down here. You have a web services section here, which allows you to set up connections to different, what we call web services, which are these kind of third-party tools which supply data. I won't go into the kind of details of how you go about setting that up, but essentially all it involves is, again, just filling in forms. So taking kind of information from the company's website that you're putting the data from, and then inserting it into the screen, these different forms here, and that allows you to kind of set up that full data integration. So at this point, we can build out the front end of our system, we can set up the data structure for it, And we can also build out these custom workflows, which allow us to do simple things like log a user in or load some information, and also very complex things like third-party data integrations. At this point, you'd have enough actually to build your full application. But we also offer a bunch of other tools in case you kind of want to go a bit further as well. So we have tools like this authentication profile section here, which allows you to set up kind of custom authentication for your application. So custom ways of kind of logging people in. We have this public file section here, which allows you to upload things like image files, resources, and so on that you're going to use in your app. We have this configuration section here, which allows you to connect to your own kind of external systems. So things like maybe you want to connect to some like server that you set up and load some information from there. You can do that all from the configuration section. And then we have this template section here, which allows you to come in and start to integrate your own code, if you're a developer, directly into your app as well. The kind of power of this section here is if you were to be building some really complex system that wanted to do some kind of advanced kind of data analysis, what you could do is you could set up the whole kind of data integration like we've done here. And then you could also simply kind of plug in some custom scripts or something from this screen here that you could just write by hand. Finally, then we have other sections to set up kind of custom data models for your data integrations. And yeah, there's kind of a huge breadth of functionality in this. We offer kind of longer training periods to go through all of it. But for now, I think this kind of gives a decent flavor of the kind of things that we've got in the app. So I guess I'll pass back to James now, and then he can wrap up. And then if we have any questions as well, we can field those.
Sure. So I think it was just, so on the way we onboard, if I just share my screen again. Here it is, bottom. So kind of the way we onboard users at the moment is that we offer out kind of two methods for people, depending on who you are. So if you're a corporate who wants to be trained on the platform, like a development agency, a consultancy who wants to go and find more value for your clients, or if you're a corporation that maybe has got an internal development team that's understaffed, under-resourced, you've got too much work to do, basically. We offer kind of like a weekly training session, 10 days of training over 2 weeks, 3 hours a day, in order to make you an effective user. For the corporations, what we do is we say, bring with you an example application that you want to build. What we would like generally people to bring are wireframes of the application that they're looking to build. So a wireframe is kind of like an interactive prototype. Then we also ask them to bring a list of any of the third-party APIs that they want to integrate with. And we, over a 10-day period, we kind of walk you through building your application. So the start of the session, you kind of just come with just a drawing of your application, and then by the end of the 10 days, you'll have that complete application built out on the platform. And then I think one of the things we're talking about with Bangladesh Angels as well is to run a more formal kind of like bootcamp style session, where we'll invite people to again come and experience that, but more from the startup space, where people want to build kind of custom applications within a condensed time period at a more affordable rate than going to like a development agency and having them build the entire thing and code it from scratch. After 10 days of training, so what we've kind of seen is that for a developer or like a more technical user, they can literally get onboarded on the platform in a matter of hours. So that can be like anywhere between maybe 3-5 hours in order to get familiar with the different bits of functionality. For the less technical users who don't have a development background, the concepts need to be taught. So that can take anywhere between 5 and 10 days to kind of onboard a non-technical user onto the platform. Then, as with any other tool, the more you use it, the better you get at it. So if you have ongoing questions, we have in-app support, so you can ask questions. So we got a team of there's seven developers who basically sit behind the application, as well as Samuel, who will be on the other end of that channel. And then when you ask a question, we'll respond to you as quickly as we can. We work at the moment on UK hours, so 9 to 5, I think, is the support hours. But yeah, like we're obviously excited to have more and more people use the application. And I think that if you have an idea for an application, and I don't know if Nahor has another way that he wants this done, because we didn't discuss it before, but what we've been doing is taking people emailing in the ideas for their applications to idea@dittofi.com. We schedule like a quick call with you to kind of go through what your plan is and what you might find for kind of like use within the application, and then we take it from there. Is the basic idea. But I think Bangladesh Angels might have a different offer. So I might pass back to Nahor now for any questions.
Yeah, no worries. And thanks for that. So I've shared a link. So as you can imagine, like, I mean, I suppose that these are things that, it's a platform that still, I think you need some help, right, to get going and to start using. And I genuinely believe that everybody in this room, including Bangladesh Angels included, right, can benefit from a platform like this. And so what we're working with Dittofi on is, we want to kind of create a joint workshop exclusively for Bangladesh Angels members and startups within Bangladesh Angels ecosystem to be able to, offer it at cost, hopefully, or a little bit, offer at cost and for your teams to get onboarded onto the platform and start building things, right? So if you're interested in that, please, fill out the survey that I've just shared. We'll follow up with you afterwards. We'll try to gauge, my team will follow up. We'll try to gauge what you're trying to build, and we'll share that with the Dittofi team, and we'll come up with a timetable for this. But if you're interested, please, let us know, and also please, leave your name in the link that I've just shared, because we're very interested. We would love for this to get start in Bangladesh. So yeah, we're and we're obviously very grateful to the Dittofi team for being interested in doing that as well.
Sounds really awesome. Yeah, it's that huge. The huge problem in the supply and the demand for high quality developers. The fact that we also, just to say again, we do give you back the source code at the end of the sessions as well. So your business, your startup, your corporate is really going to have a very tangible asset that they can own at the end of that process. It's very different from other no-code platforms, which lock you in on that vendor model. We really do give you back that. So we're kind of changing the way that these applications service the user.
Absolutely. We've already got 4 takers. I don't know if we're doing first come, first served. So feel free to keep hey, I don't think it will be more than 10 or 15. So yeah, please fill in your name, and obviously I'll send out an email with the video of this afterwards as well. But maybe, in the meantime, we can kind of go to the audience questions. They've been kind of patiently waiting, and I'm sure many of them have a lot of questions about the platform itself. So maybe we'll now open up the floor. Feel free to unmute yourself, introduce yourself as well to the team, and let's discuss a little bit more about how this can be useful to you.
Hi, it's Bapti again. Sorry for taking the first floor every time. Okay, so I have one question. You showed that there's a place to write custom code. Does it matter which language you're using writing the code in?
So what we're having the system is kind of a setup where you can take information and send it kind of to any code written in any language. So for writing things like data algorithms to analyze data, that could be written in any language. We also have a section where you can write kind of custom bits of code for the front end of your system. And for that, you would have to write that bit in JavaScript. That's just for, kind of small bits of custom logic on the front end. I can't really think of an example, but maybe like changing the color of a button or something on a click, then that kind of thing would be like a custom bit of JavaScript code. And then for anything else, yeah, you can write in any language, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Ismail speaking. Hi, Sam. This is a question for you. I'm just wondering, in your platform, do you have API integrations possible, like Stripe or Twilio?
Yeah, so what we've developed is a kind of generic way to set up connections to any, any technically called like an HTTP service. So that would be pretty much every company in the world offers services in this like standardized format. So we've built a kind of generic way to do that. So yeah, we've done connections to Stripe already for other customers. I've done connections to other accounting platforms like QuickBooks and PayPal. I've done connections into like financial data, this kind of thing. And then what we also offer is we're kind of building out a bunch of templates, basically, which you can just install off the shelf. So at the moment, if you want to set up a connection to Stripe, you can do that by basically filling out a bunch of forms on the platform. But what you can also do now is just click a button and install a template, and it will kind of auto-fill all those forms for you to save you the time. Actually, I can set that integration up.
Someone's actually done Twilio
Awesome.
as well, Samuel.
I have? Okay, not me.
No, not you.
I just have another question from a business perspective. Do you think it's possible to have intellectual property on an application that's running on your platform? If you get what I'm trying to say.
So in terms of intellectual property ownership, we run two models for that. So on the one model, we offer kind of an all-you-can-eat package where users can own the intellectual property directly as it's developed, and then you can plug it directly into GitHub, or you can just download it on your computer, and then that's kind of like yours as you develop. So it just, whatever you build is immediately yours, and that ownership immediately transfers to you. Any templates that you use, it becomes a shared copyright ownership. And the reason for that is because it's kind of like a co-ownership of the template, because other people might also want to purchase the template. But anything that you custom build on the platform, so anything that you custom set up, whatever integration that is, whatever front end that is, that's completely yours at that point. And then if you want to kind of kick the can down the road, you want to like develop everything under a free setup model, you can do that as well. And then we have like an automated kind of price that kicks out at the end for the computer code. So maybe in like 5 years, you want to just exit the platform, it will automatically generate a price for you and say this is how much it costs today. The way we priced the code, or the way we went through that process, is we those first like 5 to 10 businesses that we brought in, I got a development agency to price those as though they were going to manually code them. So then we looked, okay, how long did it take it to do in ours? How much did the other development agency charge for it? And then we cut the price in half, and then we cut the price in half again. So you get it at like the cheapest basic available rate, basically. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
I've got one question for you both from a fundraising standpoint, right? So I know obviously you raised money as Dittofi, but I don't know if you had conversations with VCs about this. I've been in touch with one India-based VCs, for example. That's this is now their thesis. Actually, they're looking specifically at no-code-based platforms, right, to invest in. But what are the implications of that, right? So if somebody were to build, their applications on no code and then try to fundraise, how do VCs look at it? Do they see that as positive, or do they say, well, clearly you don't have the technical prowess, you need to invest in that? Maybe this is a general question, but curious how that's been from your side.
Yeah, so I can answer that kind of like anecdotally. I've had a bunch of friends who've built software applications using no-code platforms, and kind of what they found is that if they use like a tool like Bubble, for example, they build the beginning of their application, and they kind of, those platforms, they have hooks in them to kind of like bring you in. So they give you a way to kind of get from your idea to kind of like a form to sign up a user, or maybe go a little bit further than that, maybe get a few screens up. But then at some point, the complexity level reaches a certain level where you do need kind of like proper training in order to move forward on any no-code platform. At that point, normally what happens is you will go one of two ways. You'll either kind of go like the bootcamp route, or you'll go you'll hire what they call the no-code developers, and then the no-code developers kind of like continue the thing for you. And what a lot of my friends experienced, and this was probably in about 2016, 2015, when they were using these tools, is that the development process became increasingly difficult for them. So they had to kind of manage the business side of what they were building, and then at the same time also do the no code on the no code platform. So at some point they ended up, paying for this thing to be built, but then they were telling me, but we don't actually own any of that intellectual property. And now when I'm talking to like a VC, or I'm talking to any of these other people, they might think like, okay, great, you've got this kind of like prototype app in the market, but there is a risk still that you've got to rebuild that whole thing from scratch to kind of, move on with it. So at least the VCs I've spoken to and the conversations I've had, that seems to be kind of a bit of a blocker there for certain types of applications, the ones that, you're really going to have to kind of like customize. Because what a lot of founders don't realize is that the first time when you put a product in the market, pretty much everyone's going to say this is not what we wanted originally. It's very difficult to think of like how the market's going to respond to what you build. So you go through that kind of like ugly product market fit problem where you have to try and constantly iterate on the solution while working with the customers to figure out exactly what they want. And in that kind of like iteration period, you want to go quickly because you want to constantly service your customers. But if you're using one of these using a no-code platform, that might be possible to do if you're sufficiently tooled up on it to do it yourself. But it does become quite like a big burden to work with. And you run the risk of the no-code platform having a feature limitation, which doesn't allow you to find that product market fit. So we had a case of a girl who was based out in Michigan, and she built an application using a no-code platform, and she ran into that limitation. She then went back to the no-code platform and she said, like, look, I need these 3 new features for my customers. And unless I get these customers on, I can't raise the funding to continue with the project. The no-code platform said, it's going to be 6 months before we put those features in. So now she was kind of like straddled, paying like a monthly fee for this platform. I think she was paying about $500 a month for it. And so she's bleeding out money as a startup. That's like obviously bad. Time is killing her. Her users are kind of like drifting away, or that initial traction that she'd had got, they were kind of leaving, and she was in that horrible block there where she couldn't get through it. So she came to us and she said, these are the problems I have. Is this something that you're able to fix? So we put the platform together, and again, we pushed her through that initial blockage. But then again, like she ran into another limitation, even on our platform, like a couple of months later. So what she did then was she took the code off our platform, and she was able to move forward from it with another technical person. So really, like, you don't ever want to be locked in, at least is my perspective, with one particular vendor, because if they do have any of those limitations, you're kind of at their mercy, and you never really know when you're going to run into one of those limitations. So that was why we always wanted to make sure that we could give the source code back to the users. So that's kind of, I guess, a roundabout answer. But does that kind of roughly make sense? I think basically what I'm saying is that the VCs look probably more favorably on people that have built like a real tangible asset in there. Absolutely. That they control.
Absolutely. And I suppose, like, and what is the commercial relationship between, the customer and Dittofi post, I guess, exporting of the source code, right? And do they still have to keep paying you a royalty or anything like that, or?
No, so we give complete access, ownership over the source code at that particular point in time. So you extract it, you take it, you own it, and it's yours. Obviously, we if you're on the hosted model, so if you're like actually operating within our cloud environment in one of those secure containers, and you want to keep accessing kind of the administration panels and things like that, then you need to stay on the platform. But if you extract it and take it, that's yours. It's completely yours at that point. You can do what you want with it. The only exception is on the case of the templates, where we have that copyright in place, because multiple people can buy those templates.
Another question, without kind of being too facetious, but in any given week, we'll get a proposal for a ride-hailing app, right, or a commoditized business model. in the startup space, which is almost like an SME now, right? Ride hailing, logistics, food delivery, e-commerce marketplace, what have you. Do you have templates like that maybe, you know, if I were to kind of get somebody looking to build something like that, I could say, well, you know, you use Dittofi. I mean, do you have templates like that already, or could that be possible, right, on your platform?
Yeah, I mean, everything's possible kind of on the back end portion of the platform at the moment, which is where the majority of that kind of power will need to be. In terms of the templates, we're building them out at the moment. So we have seen that kind of like really dramatic growth in the business from April 2020 through till March now. So our next stage of our journey is to basically put in more of those templates and to make those more available. So we're actually building a lot of stuff in the e-commerce space at the moment, because we have a bunch of agencies who have started to ask for more templated apps in those areas. But yeah, like it's certainly very much possible within the application.
Absolutely. And that was also my question. You know, in Bangladesh, you know, there's a pretty significant freelance population. There's a pretty significant, you know, software development industry, and that could also be beneficial. This could also be beneficial for them, right?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things actually we're doing at the moment in Rwanda is we're running next month in May, we're running a no-code hackathon with one of the no-code schools over there. And one of the things that I really like about it is that there's a whole bunch of development agencies there who want to kind of like build that bridge back to the West to sell the services. And this is a tool that really allows them to build up those applications and sell like that real source code back to the users without necessarily needing to code that entire thing from scratch. So one of the things that the no-code campus that we're working with has been doing is they've been actually they haven't been doing it, but I think some of their attendees have been doing is they've been building these applications already on other no-code platforms. And what people, I guess, who I've spoken to in Canada, in the UK, in the US have kind of noticed is that there are like scalability issues on the applications that they're acquiring in these cases. So one of the examples is there's a no-code platform. There's a few no-code platforms out there that will run, for example, it will run based on spreadsheets. So rather than having a proper back end, a proper database, a proper, you know, like scalable system, it will be built purely on a spreadsheet. So the no-code team that we're working with in Rwanda, they used to use this all the time in order to build applications for Canadian-based businesses. And that's kind of like how I was introduced to that whole circle, because these businesses were kind of like saying, well, you know, I've got my passwords stored as plain text. So there's a certain level of like, I guess, technical education that we're kind of going through there as well to explain, you know, really what the benefit is of using a database as a backend for your system rather than using a spreadsheet. But we've just tried to kind of wrap the database view up into a spreadsheet view so that people kind of, they don't become afraid by, okay, now I'm setting up a database, try to make it look more familiar to them. But yeah, building that bridge, getting those agencies, more agencies involved is definitely something that's very, very interesting.
That's awesome. And I have to ask, because this came up and we are an angel network, are you guys looking for fundraising soon? And if there's any opportunity for angels to get involved?
Yeah, definitely. So we've closed our pre-seed round. And what we're doing is we're flipping into, so our goal is to go for kind of like from seed up to Series A in, I guess, the next 18 months. So just because of the pure growth that we've seen so far, we want to do another kind of like smaller short-term round to kind of just, you know, bridge the gap. And then what we'll do after that is we're looking to do, you know, something significantly larger towards the end of the 12 to 18 month period. Is a way to kind of like flip our valuation to something a lot higher before we go for a larger investment.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You know, cognizant of time, but you know, let's spend the next 5 to, you know, are there any more questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself, ask away. Or I may ask some of the people who might have already kind of inputted onto the sheet. Yeah, Rahat Bhai, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the health tech app you have in mind. Are you there?
Hi, Ninjor. Hi, everyone. Basically, what we have done is basically for the last couple of years, we have been developing a preventive healthcare app, which we have gone to an agency to develop it for us. But we're actually trying to figure out if we can do it on our own, because we don't think it is that complex, because we are looking into some basic figures, and that's why I'm really interested about checking out no code. I mean this no code system. Thank you.
Sure. How many people are on your team?
Basically, we are a small company. We have about 5 people running the total show. However, we have outsourced it to a agency who is developing, developing the application for us on a regular basis and updating it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for sure, with the team of 5, you probably need at least one person who's kind of dedicated to learning the material. But I would say, yeah, provided you have, provided it's not a one-man band, you'll be good to get into like a no-code platform and build on top of it. I would really stress like code ownership as being kind of paramount. You don't kind of want to get locked in on something that you can never leave the platform. There are a couple of other no-code platforms out there that are kind of playing around with this concept as well at the moment. From the mobile app sort of front end space, they're kind of doing some stuff in React Native, but there's so far the back end portion of it, I haven't come across anyone else at least who's doing what we're doing in that space.
Thank you, James.
Or
we look forward to.
Or Mushfiq, oh, thank you so much, Rahat Bhai. Mushfiq Bhai, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your marketplace model.
Well, I actually I've been toying around with this particular idea for a service marketplace that enables people to, get some of a particular function of their daily life done. I don't want to divulge it right now. I haven't. It's just an idea, and I have been personally myself designing the front end, how it should be looking like, but I don't know how to code, so that's why I was looking at this particular. I was interested when there's no code option there. If I could, drag and drop and make my thing running, that would be the greatest thing that can happen. So yeah, that's the thing. That's why I was here.
Excellent. Any more questions? Well, we have both James and Sam on the line.
I would have one if no one has any more.
Go ahead,
Bhai. Do you think it's realistic to make a ride-sharing app using no code?
Samuel, you want to take that?
What was the
ride-sharing app?
Ride-sharing app. Yeah, 100%. So most of like the applications you build, when you kind of break it down, consist of the same components basically. So you have like your front end screens, your database schema, and then you have a bunch of stuff to basically read and write data from your database. So every single app's going to have those components, and with our system you can generate the kind of code that a professional developer would write by hand to set all that up. If there's like small kind of custom sections, then like I showed you, you can kind of integrate your own code at that point if necessary. But yeah, I'd say for a simple ride sharing app, then I'd imagine you'd got to get the entire way with a no code tool such as ours anyway. I can't, I know obviously a lot of the competing ones don't offer certain features that you might need. but I can 100% see how you'd kind of get through that on our system.
Yeah, I think the code that gets generated in the background, the systems that we built previously by hand, we really thought about ways that we could automate that process. So everything from kind of like the web server setup, the application server written in Google Go, it actually conforms to the coding standards set out by Google itself. So it's the code is written properly, that auto generates. It really looks like a human being sat down and typed it all out. The only difference is that we figured out a way that you can automatically generate it from just like a sequence of inputs. Basically, we've taken a lot of care to make sure that, you know, like variable dependencies, things like that, unique naming of variables is all taken account of within the platform. So the programming concepts have been thought through in a lot of detail. And yeah, like Samuel said, wherever there's a gap in the system, which there may be for some particularly custom thing that you want to do. Primarily on the front end, I think at this point, then yeah, we give you the option to add that, like Samuel showed you in the demo.
Do you think scalability will be a problem?
Samuel, you want to take that?
And like in our previous startup, like James said, we were ingesting kind of north of 100 million records a day and had some really complex algorithms that had to actually analyze that data as it came in and produce output on it. And we've designed this system on the back of kind of all the concepts that we learned through that experience. So the system that you're getting at the end is incredibly scalable. And like we said, that's kind of why we took this approach of, I guess, generating real computer code, so that the thing that you're getting at the end is literally the kind of thing which would be built by a professional to achieve one of these things.
Yeah, I'd add to that as well that, you know, like if you consider something like Facebook or Uber or any of these different applications that have been built, those applications like Facebook would have been rebuilt 3 or 4 times at least since it was first created in Mark Zuckerberg's dorm room. So one of the things which I don't really like that much about other no-code platforms, and this doesn't apply to all of them, but that kind of like concept of cloning an application, you say like, you know, we're going to clone Facebook. I don't think that that's necessarily the best way that they present themselves, because you're not really cloning Facebook. If you were to clone Facebook, Facebook wouldn't need a development team, you know? So I do think that at some point, you'll probably always run into a limitation, whether you go the hand-coded route or you go the no-code route, because at some point, your system is going to reach a level that if you get that many users, you know, you're talking like hundreds of millions of users on the platform, then you may at that point, you know, need to recode the whole thing or a portion of the thing. But our thing will, you know, take you a large step of the way forward. And then if you run into that like kind of like need to rebuild, like, you know, Facebook or Twitter or any of those applications have had to rebuild at some point, being able to own the computer code and understand where you are today and be able to give that to, you know, like I don't know, a really experienced CTO to kind of bring that forward at that point, then that's something that you're going to have as like a tangible asset. But I'll say that our system definitely can scale up to handle enormous real-time data sets. And I did a market analysis at the start. So I went around and I spoke to a bunch of different platform providers. This was in 2014, because I was thinking at the time to build using a no-code platform myself. And when you start getting to the larger data sets, larger numbers of users, larger number of connections, the price of the no-code platforms generally jump very highly for those on the market at the moment. So I was quoted a price of $2 million a year to host a system with a no-code platform, which was obviously, you know, absurd. So in our case, yeah, we built it in such a way that won't be a problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, one last question. Sorry, one last question. When it comes to operating speed, like how confident are you again with like comparing your speed against you know, code specifically written to perform one specific job.
You want to take that, Samuel?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, we're trying to build like a performant system. I guess there's two major components. There's like the code that you write, and then there's going to be like the, I guess like the infrastructure or like the hardware that you're running that on. So obviously if you write terrible code and then you run that on a massive, really powerful bit of hardware, it's not going to work. And similarly, if you write amazing code and run it on like a tiny bit of hardware, it's also not going to work. So with our system, the code that gets generated is high quality. So that kind of first component is taken care of. So we know that that's going to be performant enough to do things like I said, like we run at our previous company that we founded. So to ingest kind of huge data sets. And then in terms of like the hardware, we have a kind of deployment method where we install it with our kind of best practices. And then that kind of scales up. At some point, like James said, if you were to be like one of the most successful companies in the world, like Facebook, and you had like millions and millions of users, then at that point, you'd probably need to start looking more actually at the infrastructure and the hardware setup. So that's the point where you might want to think more about kind of, code ownership and a custom installation of what you have. But the point is that you're going to be starting off with high quality code. So you've kind of taken care of that part. And then after that, it's just a case of kind of, the installation, how well it's installed, and like the infrastructure setup, basically. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and our pricing model on that as well is designed to kind of grow with you. So we're flexible enough to be able to say, okay, you need like an extra gig of storage, or you need like a bit more memory on your machine. You can kind of, that should be smooth enough so that you can kind of be carried through the different tiers as you grow as a business.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
I think we'll end with Sadbhai. If you're on the line, feel free to jump in. You had a very specific question.
Hi, yeah. I'm sorry. What's the database? Like, is it agnostic to database types? Could you use anything like MySQL, Oracle, or is it like specific database type that plugs into the backend?
So at the moment, the database that's used to kind of store your general data is Postgres, so SQL database. We don't use any kind of specific Postgres features. That's just the one that we're running. So you should be able to run against other SQL databases as well. And then we're also in the process of integrating another database for the kind of more big data sets. I don't know if James, you want to talk about that one at all?
Yeah, sure, you can mention.
So we're also in the process of integrating ClickHouse, which is like on a technical level, that's like a columnar database. So it stores data in columns rather than rows. And that's one that can be used for kind of really performant queries on very large data sets. So we use,
And that's a relational database.
So it's got a SQL interface to it.
Okay.
And it supports kind of 90% of like SQL features, but it's also designed to be kind of very performant. So there are some features that are left out basically, which would be detrimental to that performance.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you.
I think we're getting to the 90-minute mark, so I think we'll leave James and Sam's rest of the afternoon, and obviously to you as well. Quite late in Bangladesh time, but thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Thanks for those who left your names, and obviously thank you for attending as well. Looking forward to continuing this conversation and really introducing. Hopefully, maybe some of these application ideas that are floating around, though a year from now, maybe they'll be the next big thing, I think, in the Bangladesh startup ecosystem. But otherwise, you're very helpful, and thank you so much for joining, and talk to you soon. And thanks a lot to James and Sam. I really cannot thank you enough for your time.
No, thank you for having us. It was a great session. Thanks for everyone's ideas.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye for now. Bye.
Cheers, bye.